toward the One, the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty, the only being, united with all the illuminated souls who form the embodiment of the Master, the Spirit of guidance.
So welcome everyone to this first of our 6 classes on living in the resurrection body. Welcome to those who are just joining us. Thank you for taking a look at some of the videos to maybe firm up some of the knowledge and inspirations so that we can be together and start thinking about what is it that is the resurrection body, and how can we incorporate what we're learning about the resurrection body to living in the world now. Let's begin with a prayer that Zia gave us at the recent retreat about light. And this tradition that we've been learning from is all about light. Oh God, place light in my heart and light in my soul, light upon my tongue, light in my eyes and light in my ears. Place light in my right, light at my left, light behind me, and light before me. Place light in my nerves and light in my flesh, light in my blood, light in my hair, and light in my skin. Give me light, increase my light, make me light. So it is an appropriate prayer to begin with, because this is a tradition of light. We've been adventuring in the Zoroastrian tradition, but really it was the discoveries that the Sufis of the 1000 years AD and to about even up to the present time really discovered in the Zoroastrian tradition, bringing forth this quest of the light and recognition that we all are light. It's almost a common denominator of everything that they found, like almost a realm of light that exists along with the other realms that we're challenging each other to bring forward in the work that we're doing together. Because it doesn't make any sense to have a multi-dimensional existence if there aren't already dimensions that we are bringing together. So we'll learn some more about those together today and in our other classes. And more than anything, we promised you that we would take a look at the what we call the true imagination, or the real imagination, or the royal imagination, and find different capacities that are included in that. So we'll be highlighting some of those as we take a look tonight at, first of all, where have we gone, and then to go right into, so what is next? So I'd like to highlight a few of the things that we have spoken about in this discovering, exploring. And it'll be very familiar to some of you, but I found in reading The Spiritual Body, Celestial Earth for about 30 years now, repetition is very good. And so here we go, thinking about, first of all, this term called Svarna, X-V-A-R-N-A-H. We called it the light of glory. It was called a transitive, active, and activating energy. And it communicates being, establishes it, and causes it to superabound in all beings. So that was the light that we spoke about already in our prayer. But also, I don't think we've thought about it in terms of a light which not only is coming from every direction, as I said the last class, but also is in a certain kind of shape, almost like a diamond that directs light in all different directions. As well as coming from all different directions, and really unites all that we think of as separate in this glorious light. Svarna is also the organ by which the soul perceives the world of light. This is something that we are learning in our discovery of this world that we call the Barzakh. That is said that we can't enter it with the five senses. So how can we get into contact with this world? Well, it is through the image, through images of different kinds, that, including here this Varna, the light itself, this light of glory, that somehow can act as an organ, can act as we use our eyes or our ears, and effects a transmutation that we can call tawil. And we find out that not only are particular symbols good at that, but as we go around about our daily walks, or as we go about our work in the world, we find, oh, everything is a possible source. Or as Azurbash loves to say, everything is a portal to the divine, to the, what do you
Sacred.
say? Sacred. So this process called tawil is something that we worked with some. And it is the way of opening to these multiple dimensions of things. It is a kind of sight that comes to us through this idea of Svarna, which I said was like a multi-dimensional way of seeing things on all the levels on which they exist. And that's, again, not possible unless there were already many levels on which everything, including us, we exist. This process, we say, takes place. Why does this happen? How is it possible that this one opening up to something else brings all these other worlds? We find that we are continually having a meeting in these different realms with a being, with even some qualities that somehow begin to seem very familiar to us. We wonder why are they so familiar to us? And the deeper that we go to it, we find there's the unity behind it. And we are one with this. There's no separation between us. But somehow there's this beautiful simultaneous situation where you have these things being separate and yet one. And that's a term that Azurbash has, relational unity, is a term that encompasses this idea. It's like, well, no, I mean, my friend, how that's a good example. And I'm looking at them and I feel like I'm almost more my friend than I am me. And what is this? And this beautiful unfolding of love and compassion, because we are finding, yes, we are one with this, even though they are separate. So this is this operation of tawil, and also speaks of our pure, true imagination that unveils things, doesn't just cook up some fantasy, but it unveils the way the world is. Also, the inner world, the Barzakh, which is this realm between the material world and the transformed and the holy, the sacred. In this place, figures take shape at this point where data of sensory perception are raised to this diaphanous state by the imagination. So we meet beings in this world, and we spoke about some of them in a couple classes ago about the angels of transformation. And I must say that these ideas get us started in being able to perceive those that are within, and not only those that are within, but even states of being that are within us. That we go with an open mind and we find wonderful things. And again, this is one way of doing things, and we're using what the Zoroastrians learned many years ago, but it is they say knowledge which has proved its beauty and has proved its truth. And we can accept it with an open heart and then find what else is there for us and what can we add to the story. And a little bit more about the active imagination, which is kind of the focus of what we are up to in the next 6 weeks. It's the organ of metamorphosis. It's the transmutation of the earth into the substance of the resurrection body. Depends upon its manner of meditating upon the earth. So that means that this imagination enters into really this realm that we are speaking of as the Barzakh. Azarbash has a really wonderful way of speaking about this tonight in a way that I hadn't heard before. And one more thing is it says that such meditation as the source of the soul's activity is the organ of its birth. So we have a birth of the soul again and again in this process. There are marriages, there are births, and all of these bring us to a new way of understanding. So the last thing about our exploration has been our relationship to Spenta Almighty as the archangel of the earth. And not only is there transformation of ourselves in this process, there is the transformation of the earth. And this is a great mystery for us because we're wondering, well, is this the earth, the dirt under our feet? And is, what exactly is going to be transformed in this? So we'll stay open to the answer to that, and perhaps in your meditations. So what is actually changing in this transformation process, in this what they call geosophy, this process which not only transforms the being, but also transforms the earth. So the 4 different things that we said were important to our relationship with Spenta Almighty were to allow the house of Spenta Almighty to open within us, which has to do with this multidimensional ability, exemplifying in one's person the mode of being of Spenta Almighty. So that means the different qualities that she has, we try to exemplify in our own being, including the provident action, which is caring for the earth and the beings in the earth, and the holy action, the hierurgic function, which has to do with making the liturgies or the practices also that bring us closer to realization. And the third is the one we've said already, is that perfect thought, they call it, or even mater vitae, which is that means the mother of life, that is the thought of wisdom. It is the true imagination, the power capable of substantiating and vivifying. And finally, is the realization of our own celestial self within us, that each one of us is a twin of this being of light. And in learning what this is our own individuality that's coming forward, our uniqueness. So this is how do we enter into this geosophy? It is in our unique way that is only ours and is ours to unfold and realize so that we can contribute what no other being can to this wonderful process. So then we go on to what is this week.
Well, and also a bit about what is this whole series about, which is living in the resurrection body. So the first question is, well, exactly what is the resurrection body? Many of you have heard the famous saying of the Sufis, die before death and resurrect now. And that means becoming into the fullness of the possibilities of our being. And so how does that come about? Well, it comes about through Ibn Arabi has a beautiful term, he calls it an intra-divine creative process, I-N-T-R-A. So it's something that only takes place between the relationship between our manifest being and our plug-in, you could say, to the divine, our unique way of experiencing the divine. And where does this meeting take place? Well, it takes place in what we've been calling the Barzakh, or in the Gabrielite work, we simply call it the meeting place. And how do we arrive at this meeting place? Well, we can't get there through the usual process of thinking. So what the creative imagination is not trying to prefigure an experience, thinking, well, I'm trying to get to this experience, so if I just think about it hard enough, then I will be there. But rather, it's opening up to a receptive state of being. There is an intention, but it's receptive and open-ended without a prior expectation of what the response is going to be. And in order for that process to take place, there has to be a means of connection with what's on the other side of ourselves. We could say what comes to the meeting place from the divine side. And so what can that connection be? Well, it can be all manner of things. It can be starting a process I've mentioned I often use in my meditation is I will sit with a question, something I'm trying to understand, and oftentimes a connection between something I've read about in science or something I've read about in Ibn Arabi and wondering how does that apply to science, or vice versa. And I'll just sit with that and open to it. And then I get kind of a little nibble and I sort of orient to that internal response. I call it docking. And then something clicks, something opens up, and something is revealed. The response comes to that. And you might think, well, is this like just plugging into the way people have thought about the Akashic records, the divine storehouse of all knowledge, and now you've been granted access to the divine library and you're looking up something in a book that's sitting there? No, it's really what arises through that meeting. Something is born through that connection. So this goes back to, well, how is the resurrection body established? The resurrection body is established by innumerable meetings like this that bring forth something in our being that now we can claim as our own. We are awakening to a higher, you could say, dimensionality of being that was not available to us before. So the usual notion of spirituality would be something coming down from the divine into manifestation and acting upon it and changing it somehow. So it's just receiving on this end. It's a one-way process. But over and over, the Sufis talk about this two-way process, this intra-divine process of human-divine interaction and relationship that brings forth a creation. Ibn Arabi talks about the true imagination is the divine creative process, and each of us is a product of the imagination of God. But each of us is endowed with, because we are, you could say, miniatures of the divine being in a unique way, that we can also bring forth that divine creation through our being, coming up with this way of relating to things. So Rabbani Ra mentioned this principle that I call relational unity, and it's a way of experiencing whatever it is we're interacting with. It could be something in the world, it could be a person, it could be a plant, it could be almost anything, but also it can be on the inner realm of things, something that is in a transcendent dimension. So we're having an experience of that, and we're not separated from it. We're not in our dualistic state of consciousness. We're in a, you could say, a very permeable, dynamic state of relationship in which there is this, we don't have the right terms in English. I can say back and forth, but it's not like that. It's like everything is having an impact on everything else on both sides. And from that meeting, that way of experience, something is opened up. The Sufis talk about when two things come together in this manner, two presences, a third presence is born that is the result of the light of each side of that illuminating the potentialities of the other side. And now something becomes possible that was not possible before. So what does it mean? Rabbani Ra mentioned the Zoroastrians talked about becoming an instrument for the transfiguration of the earth. But once again, that does not mean like bringing nice things down into the physical earth that we walk around on. It means having the capacity to be in a state of becomingness that opens up the world into a state of being an experience that is so much richer than our normal way of experiencing things. And it's not like we disappear up into the ethers and just become very ethereal and spacey. We are very firmly grounded, but we are opened up to an extent we don't feel bounded by the boundaries of our skin. We don't feel limited by the usual concepts that we have in our mind or the usual way of relating to things with our emotions. We're in just this such rich state, you could say, of the divine interacting with the divine through countless names and forms of which each of us is a unique expression of. So that would be a beginning of an idea of what it would be like to really live in the resurrection body. And we all have glimmers of what this is like. So what are some examples of this? Well, one example I'm sure we've all had if we've been in some beautiful place in nature, Yosemite, the Grand Canyon, by the ocean, and we just feel this state of reverence, and time seems to stand still. Everything seems to be so clear, or it could be listening to music. It could be doing something, whether it's working with art or poetry or dance. It could be a scientist making a breakthrough scientific discovery, something that just clicks and opens up a totally different domain of experience from what was present before. We feel so much more alive. And we have countless opportunities every day. Ravani Rao mentioned something I often say, that everything is a portal to the sacred, and especially those things that we get caught up in and stuck in that normally cause us to constrict and withdraw. If we can use every time that happens as a reminder, here's an opportunity to have a further revelation of the divine expressed, awakened in life, in the thick of this very situation. And then we use whatever quality we're being called upon to manifest in that situation as a way of opening that situation up into a different space. And it doesn't mean the external appearance is going to change. If it's dealing with a difficult person, it doesn't mean they're necessarily going to be any different, but it's like our heart is opened up and it becomes much vaster than the situation we were just pulling back within and constricted. Yeah.
So we were saying that we would identify different aspects of our visionary capacity. And here's one that Azarbash just introduced to you, is this opportunity for an intra-divine meeting place. Opening up, not having reservations, not trying to configure it, and allowing things to open that are called forth in our daily life. It could be, he mentioned so many different wonderful ones, including difficult situations. And we kind of say, whoa, here's that one that we're talking about, and it's painful, and okay, I'm going to try this. And maybe not in the middle of the situation where you are at the moment, but you kind of earmark it for later, and then sit with that and find what is wanting to come through at this point. So there's the difficult situations that might unfold, one use of this imagination. There is the thinking of the situation as that the divine is in relationship with you right now. And what is this that is coming through in this relationship? So we already have two, and hopefully we'll have many more ways to use this beautiful, true imagination.
So we're aware that there's so many names of God. In Islam, there's 99 names of God. And once again, the basic level of relating to these are all things that belong to the divine, and we can tune into them, we can apply them, so to speak, to our being to bring about a result. And that's certainly one way of thinking about them. The vibration, the sound associated with each of the wazaif has a very powerful effect, as does contemplating the meaning. But the effect can be just exponentially greater if we can consider that each of these qualities is a particular modality of relationship between our human self and our divine being that takes place by means of that quality. So for us to be able to have a class with you, we use language, we use words, and you listen to the words and you understand them. The wazaif are kind of like a language of the divine, but they're also a particular aspect of relationship. And it isn't just something coming down from the divine to us through that quality. And those of you who were in on the last series or who have watched all the last series, we've talked about when we work with a particular wazifa with a name of God, and we work with it in a very conscious way, that we actually bring about a change in what's embodied in that particular quality that wasn't present before with each repetition. And that change that takes place in that divine quality now becomes available to all beings everywhere. And that's true of anyone who works with the practice in this way, going back through time and so on.
May I just underline it for you
Yeah.
again? So we're saying that it's every time we are working either with a wazifa or in relationship with someone else, that it's possible for both sides of that to evolve. That we actually have to do with the change on both sides. So that we are that Zvarna, which is both the participants in the meeting place. That is uniting us. And we are one. And if we remember that and, just live it, believe it, act as if it is true, then we'll begin to see how it is really unfolding that way. And it's even like, again, being with a friend, if you're establish this closeness and you know that you are so close and come from the same place, then what you say to them is very different than confrontation. But it's that way in all of our spiritual relationships also, from one side to the other. If we recognize that we really are of the same substance, then the transformation happens on both sides.
And this is the meaning the Sufis talk about these triplets: the seer, the seen, the act of seeing; the knower, the known, the act of knowing; the lover, love, and the act and the beloved. So there are three separate words here, but it's a triplet that each part is an integral part of the other, and none of the parts really has meaning without the other two parts. So it's this intra-divine process that takes place when we consciously experience a practice in this way. So I'd like to make a little segue here and talk about how the Sufis talk about the purpose is awakening of divinity in life. We say that that's the purpose of our order that was established by Hazrat Inayat Khan. And so what does that mean? Well, on an individual level, we probably have an understanding, awakening to the divinity that's present in our being. But I think the deeper meaning of this is, first of all, asking ourselves, so what is the life that it's talking about, awakening of the divine in life? Well, that life is this transformed world that we're talking about, that comes about when we enable this intra-divine process to take place and what's birthed forth from that. So what starts out and what seems to be an individual journey of awakening, at some point we come to realize in actuality it's our participation in the grandest cosmic ongoing process of the divine awakening to him herself in existence, that each of us is an integral part of that process. And so we are actually helping to bring about the birth of that awakening of divinity, not just to ourselves, but to the divine being that can only take place through this meeting. So the Sufis talk about God cannot just zap down and incarnate into existence, what we think of as God. But and Hazrat Khan says, well, do we see God? And he says, well, we see it in the human being, especially in the realized human beings, so that we can become human divine beings that embody the blossoming, ongoing blossoming that takes place in that relationship. So that would be another way of talking about what the resurrection body is about, that we'll be working towards giving you some components of or steps in the process along the way in these classes.
Yes. As we were preparing for this class, one comment that I was making was that that these authors, these Sufis from the 1000s that discovered Zoroastrianism, spoke of that the place where we gather our body of resurrection is in her Kali, or in the Barzakh, And, you know, he's going, well, that's kind of, you know, this terminology is kind of difficult. I'm not quite sure, I mean, what that is. And so we worked it. This is kind of an example of when you have a struggle in explaining something to someone else, and don't give up and march off. But we just kept at it and unfolded it. And he has a wonderful way of speaking about it. But before he adds, like, culminates what it has been, let me just say that I had already said that all of our moments of realization take place in the Barzakh. And also transformation all takes place in the Barzakh. It is the place where everything is held, all the beauty, the essence of who we are is collected in the Barzakh, and then our resurrection body is created from that, not from all the matter that dies with the physical body. That's not where it is resurrected from. It's from all that we do, all that we love, all that we transform, that we, you know, have action of different kinds, that all the imagination that we're going to be talking about, and all the processes that we allow to happen. So what do you want to say?
So I just had a thought about this. There's that old saying, you can't take it with you. But anytime you have a true experience, which occurs in this meeting place, and you can think back in your life, the times that really stand out, the most significant realizations and experiences that you had, well, that's exactly what you take with you. I mean, that's what persists, what's carried forth. It's like the quintessence or the perfume from your life. So the resurrection body is not the way it's depicted in paintings and historical Christian art, the physical body rising up out of the grave. It's the what endures, what has been made adamant in the alchemical process that isn't solely happening from our human side. I've said this before, but the alchemical process is the ongoing fruit of the human divine relationship. Both sides are transformed. And so this birthing of the elements of the resurrection body and the sustenance and the sustainability of the resurrection body are continually taking place through this condition of meeting and blossoming forth something. new creation that takes place at every instant. Every instant is a new opportunity to relate to things in this way that brings forth a further blossoming. And so that is the stuff, so to speak, or the elements of the resurrection body. We create that with our divine aspect of our being. It's a co-creation of our human hyphen divinity. It can only take place through both parts of that. The divine side cannot do that by itself. The human side cannot do it by itself. It's only in this relationship and what arises from that can this process occur.
So this would be a very good time for us to meditate. And if you could use the feeding the angel meditation that most of you have learned, to be feeding that which we have transformed in our being, even that which is on its way to be transformed, that which we have succeeded in realizing, that which we take joy in, that which we love. We're feeding that angel, and in the Barzakh, the elements then of that resurrection body. So it does happen anyway, but this is a wonderful way to gather together things that maybe haven't been brought to this angel's attention, and just to feel it within us, what this feeling, this rising up kind of feeling is, that is going to become our resurrection body. So let's take a few moments to enact this. You may want to use your breath to help with this too. You may feel some trickles of something being fed back to you from your angel too. Let's let it happen.